out sharing issues. Okay. Which one? Okay. So I am having a few challenges with my laptops. So I may be using Godwell's laptop to share the slides. But in the meantime, I'm speaking to you from my phone. So the host, if you can allow, okay, so joining as Godwell. So if you can make Godwell host so that I can share my screen. But this evening, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. It's that kind of topic that you never finish talking about, and the kind of topic that you are never bored listening to it or hearing about it. We are talking about boundaries, setting boundaries. Okay. Okay. No, what's that? Hello. You hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
And can you see my slide?
Yes, but it's not in presentation.
Visible.
Let's see if it moves. Does it move?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So we are talking about certain boundaries. And I have decided to call it sacred spaces. Sacred spaces. Certain boundaries in Christian relationships. We've done our opening hymn, and for this presentation, I seek to answer three main questions and then draw some conclusions. So I seek to answer the question, what are boundaries? What do we define or describe as boundaries? I seek to answer the question, why boundaries matter in relationships? And I seek to answer the question, how we can set boundaries that honor God, protect us, and others. Protect us, protect others, and honor God. My first lesson on boundaries. I was a little girl. I had visited my grandmother from the city, and she took me to the farm. She and her big sister had portions of the land where they farmed. And on this day when we went to the farm, she and her sister had a very hot argument at the farm. What about a small portion of the land? My grandmother's sister had removed some plants or flowers. I didn't know what they were for, from where they were originally, and put them at a different place that claimed a very little amount of land from my grandmother's farm to hers. And my grandmother said no, she should remove the plants and put them back where they were. I didn't understand it and I didn't like the argument. So I just told my grandmother, it doesn't matter, it's a small piece of land. So if allowing her to shift the plants will bring peace, just let go. And then my grandmother told me the story in the Bible. I heard it for the first time about a man in the Bible who had a vineyard that King Ahab and his wife wanted. And he said, no, it is passed on from my ancestors and I must preserve and pass it on to others. And it made a lot of sense to me. Boundaries in our traditional, in Ayamakan, so in Akan, if you go to the farm, they call them a share. They are like, well, they actually are spaces, lines that are drawn either with plants or with trees to demarcate ownership, to demarcate pieces of land and to show ownership. Who owns this land? Who owns which part? So am I saying then that we should be drawing lines on our bodies and our lives to indicate which part of our bodies belongs to who and so on and so forth? Far from it, but this is a good analogy. So boundaries have been defined as the rules and personal likings or personal beliefs that tell us what we don't want other people to do to us or what we will not accept from other people. But looking at my grandmother's example from the farm, I am looking more at boundaries metaphorically, like property lines, which define where you end and where someone else begins. So if you look at the two pictures I'm showing, you can tell clearly the red lines on the right, you can tell which households are single units and which households belong together. Boundaries are like these, metaphorically like property lines that define where you end and where someone else begins, or where someone ends and where you begin. If you look at the analogy and the pictures I've shown, you realize that space is a very key concept in building boundaries. And so I'll be talking about boundaries in relation to space. So different spaces in our lives that we may identify as needing boundaries, needing metaphorical lines where we will end and someone else will begin, or where someone else will end and where we will begin. So I look at space. The first space, boundary space, I'm looking at time, temporal space. Now, temporal space refers to not just time, but the rhythm of time, the frequency of time, the availability of time, and may act as a limit or structure within relationships. It can time, temporal space is about how people use time, how they share time, how they protect their time, and how they maintain autonomy, emotional health, and relational clarity. So you can think about time in terms of how much time people need to respond. When you are friends with somebody, when you are in a relationship with somebody, and we will talk about different kinds of relationships, different people respond to relationships differently. For some people, 2 visits in a week is too much. They want time apart. They need time to think, to reflect. They need a space, time within time to reflect. Other people, 4 times a week is too little. They need a lot of time. Availability. Even when they are available, if they want 4 times or 2 times, what is the best time to engage? Some people are morning people, others are night people, others are evening people. What is the best time? I have relatives who would call you, they have good intentions. They want to call you to greet you, and they will call you around 3:30 a.m. And you are thinking, so your phone is ringing, you wake up, you are alarmed. What is the challenge? They call, hello, good morning. I called to say hello. Maybe for some people this is okay, but for other people this can be a very serious breach of the boundary of time, space, boundary as space. Then we can also talk about the rhythmic boundaries, intense versus slow-paced contact. Some people don't want you if you give them too much attention, if you are constantly calling, you are in their space and it is too much. And then we can talk about lifespan boundaries. So you can be in a relationship with somebody, you are okay living in the now, but they may not be okay living in the now. They are living in the future. Others are living in the past. And these are important things to note about time as a boundary. So if you are in a relationship and you don't pay attention to time and how time affects the relationship, it can be a problem. So temporal space can shape the way relationships form and the way they evolve, even sometimes the way they dissolve. So if you are a young person and you want to go out with somebody, you like the person, they like you, but you are unable to navigate this time or temporal space, temporal boundary, it can end the relationship. So some people will say, I feel suffocated. He doesn't allow me space, time to breathe. He is constantly calling me. Another person may say, she doesn't call me. She doesn't, or he doesn't call often, once in a week. And when he calls, it is for 2 weeks. It means that there are differences in how our temporal spaces. And if you are, you like more time, it becomes your responsibility to set the boundary, to draw the line and say, this is how I want time, how I want to spend time in this relationship. And if you don't want too much time, it is your responsibility to indicate so. And if you are in a relationship with somebody who says, too much time suffocates me, you have to respect that. So that is space as a boundary. Now, there is physical boundary, physical space, and that typically refers to touch. How people want to be touched, they don't want to be touched, and so on and so forth. So this is a space that can be broken, or it's a boundary that can be violated. And then there is emotional space. Emotional space deals with feelings and reactions, how somebody feels, how they respond to situations, and so on. People can be overwhelmed easily by stuff people can manipulate, and so on. So this is emotional space. Mental space, thoughts, values, opinions. So if you are in a relationship, you should have boundaries on your own thoughts, your values, your opinions. Your opinion matter. So if you are in a relationship where you cannot express your opinion or values, if you are interested in the relationship and you want it to work, you need to work on this. But it is one of the areas that we clearly need to set boundaries: thoughts, values, and opinions. So that's mental space. And then finally, we talk about the spiritual space. This is your relationship with God and your personal convictions, religious, spiritual convictions. You must set the rules. You must draw the lines. I am a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't do ABCD because I believe what the Bible says about ABCD and so on and so forth. So faith is a boundary space that can be violated, and we need to pay attention. So how do healthy relationships how do boundaries look like in healthy relationships? In healthy relationships, all these spaces are respected. Space, physical space, mental space, emotional space, temporal space, and spiritual space are respected and valued, upheld, maintained. So if these things are not related, if these things are not upheld, if these things are not maintained, then you have boundary violations. There are many violations that occur across all the boundary spaces we have mentioned, but I'll take a few minutes to talk about the most common violations. So disrespect for time, personal space, overdependence, emotional manipulation, spiritual guilt tripping, and lack of privacy or autonomy. Now, when you are late, if you don't respect somebody's time, you will be late for programs. If you respect people's times, when you give them time for a meeting, for a church program, you will respect the boundary, the temporal space. You will not give somebody 10 o'clock and appear at 12. So if we have a church program that is advertised at starting at 7, we should know that we hold people's temporal boundaries and that we have a responsibility to respect the time that we have set. If we start our programs late, if we close late, we are violating people's times. Now, if you are a young person, you are dating, you have an appointment with your friends, with the person you are dating or you intend to date, and the person is mindful of temporal space, and you disrespect this space, you violate their times, it can affect the relationship. So it is very important. Now, temporal space can also be violated when we overstay. You can go and visit somebody 2 hours, 3 hours, you are still there. The person gives you cues, oh, I have a meeting at 5, it is 4:30, you are still sitting there. You go and visit a family, you are staying for 10 days, 20 days, and the person keeps telling you things are very difficult these days, you don't even get it. So overstaying your visit, when you call somebody for a long time, when you visit and stay for a long time, when you call somebody too frequently, these can all be described as violating the space-time boundaries. Now, when you give time that is supposed to be given to somebody else, so remember we said space boundary is where your space ends and another person's begins. So if you are a married couple, for example, if you are a family, there should be time for family, there should be time for the couples, there should be time for the children. If you take these times and spend on some other things, it could be work, it could be spending the time with work colleagues, it could be friends, it could be social media, it could even be religious activities. Then we can say that you are violating the time boundaries because the time for yourself has ended. Now it is a time for other people, and you are taking their time to do other things. So that can also be described as violating time boundaries. Now, how you handle time can be misleading in relationships. For example, you are young people and you are spending a lot of time, opposite sex, you are spending a lot of time with somebody. It may be interpreted as, well, this person is interested in me. That's why they are spending this much time with me. So that can lead to what we call misleading. So very often when somebody says they are going out with another person, the question I ask is, are they aware that they are going out with you? Because sometimes, and actually very often, people they think they are just being nice by spending a lot of time with other people. But the others can misinterpret it to mean that if you are spending this amount of time with me, you must be interested in me. The opposite is also true. You may like somebody or you may be in a relationship with somebody, and yet you spend very little time with the person. That can also be interpreted as not being interested in the relationship or in the person. It could even be interpreted as not valuing the person or the relationship. So time is a very important boundary that we must set and negotiate. Now, physical space. Very often when we talk about a relationship, opposite sex, this is the most occurring thing. It's about sex, it's about things, touches that can lead to sex. Now, if you don't manage this space carefully, it can lead to abuse, it can lead to exploitation, and it can lead to all kinds of problems in the relationship. So it is not just touching, but it can also be hovering around. Sometimes you are too close to people, you are in their space, physically too close, and not everybody likes that kind of thing. And we must be careful how we navigate this. You are hugging all the girls in your circles. You are hugging all the boys in your circle of friends, and nobody knows which one you are serious with. It can actually put people off. Everybody might think, oh, the way he is or the way she is with this person, I think that they are going out, and it can actually block your chances. So we must navigate this also very carefully. Now, lack of privacy and autonomy. As parents, if you are, or as couple, you are reading people's emails and letters and text messages. If you have an agreement, if you have a relationship, open relationship where everybody is permitted to do so, that's no problem. But if the other person is a private person and feels that you are invading their space, this can have a lot of problems. And then when we are asking invasive questions, and putting pressure on people to provide information they are not even willing to provide. This is also crossing the lines. So in our church, we do very well. We out of concern, we try. When people are not married, so when won't you marry? When are you going to marry? And when they marry, when are you going to have children? When they have the first child, you are waiting too long. You are wasting time. Hurry up and finish. When they do it back to back, why won't you slow down? It is too much. Take your time. These are issues of privacy and autonomy. Allow people to take their own decisions and allow them to own the decisions they make. If they want to give information, that's fine. When people have explicitly said no, and we are quick or to ignore what they say, when we pass suggestive comments, when we give unnecessary compliments. So, for example, there's a young woman in the church who is not married. You too, you are not married. You are not interested in the young woman, but you are constantly complimenting and providing a lot of, you are more or less invading their privacy and autonomy. You are not allowing them to even consider whether they want to have that kind of relationship with you. So privacy, lack of privacy and autonomy is an important boundary to pay attention to. Overdependence. There are some people who constantly depend on other people to make decisions. Every little thing, they come crying to you. And sometimes this can be overburdening. It can be an overburden to the person who is at the receiving end. Every time you are complaining, and my son has done this, my daughter has done this, my husband has done this, my wife has done this, the pastor has done this. Every time. I used to have an office mate like that. There were days I could go to the office and not open a book. As soon as I enter, if she is there, that's the end of the day for me. She would speak from morning till I am tired. So it got to a point I wasn't staying in my office. I would go and sit in the library, and from there I would go and teach and go home. She found where I was hiding, so she started coming there. So I had to find another place. So these are very important things to note. Emotional manipulation. Now there's what we call guilt tripping. Very often say, oh, if you love me, you will do this. If you love me, you will not do that. When we do that, we are like blackmailing the people in the relationship, forcing them to do things they may not necessarily want to do. That's blackmail. And gaslighting is illegitimizing other people's feelings and emotions. Somebody is hurt by your action, and you are talking logic. You don't have to be hurt. How can you tell me how I should feel when I am already feeling the hurt? Okay, so there are people who, when you are in a relationship with, they can make you feel like you are wrong in even feeling or having a certain emotion. That is not our space. If somebody is feeling down, it is not our place to teach them how to feel. So gaslighting, illegitimizing people's feelings and emotions is crossing the boundary. It is violating their space, their emotional space. Allow people to feel the way they feel. You can offer support, not illegitimize the way they feel. There's the silent treatment. People do that, and people play the victim by shifting blame. So when they have offended you and you complain, they turn around and make you feel bad. That is emotional manipulation, and that is crossing emotional boundaries. Now, spiritual guilt tripping. They make you feel like if you are a Christian, this thing you should easily forgive and not talk about it. So it doesn't matter how many times I hurt you by doing the same things, you have an obligation to forgive. After all, Christ said you need to forgive 7 times 77 times. So if this one, it's only the 4th or 7th time, you can't finish counting. So forget about it. So these are instances where we violate people's boundaries, or where our boundaries may be violated. Now, boundary violations abound in the church from the statistics. There's a lot you can talk about. There are many reports available online where church-based organizations report a lot of boundary violations. Very often in the Catholic Church, you find sexual abuse issues. In Ghana, we know that there are many so-called men of God who go and bath people's wives and daughters in the middle of the night at the beach. These are invading spaces, violating their spaces, and it occurs in the church. Why do boundary violations abound in the church? Some people think that boundaries are selfish. So if you create boundaries, if you say, don't do this, I don't like this, I don't like that, you are being selfish. And if you are a Christian, Christ says we should love. And so love means saying yes to everything. And forgiveness means there are no limits to how many times people can hurt you. So when you complain, then you are not being Christian. These are not Christian views, but they are things that are deeply ingrained in the minds of many people in the church. And as a result, boundary abuse occurs a lot in Christian relationships. Another reason why this happens is emotional immaturity. Many Christians think that it is unchristian to be expressive about your emotions. It is okay. It is not good to have conflict. So they try to avoid conflict, and by so doing, they end up wearing a spiritual mask. But we should know that unresolved emotional wounds can limit spiritual growth and relational health. So if you are in a relationship with someone, if you are a family, a church family, and people are hurt and they have emotional issues and we do not properly address them, these can lead to unresolved emotional wounds, and these can lead to limits in spiritual growth. Emotional intelligence is very important in our relationships as Christians. A lot of Christians also have, as I said, because they wear a mask, there is a false self versus a true self. And when we develop a false self, we become afraid, we are ashamed, and we say cheese to the cameras and hurt inside. God invites us to discover our true self so we can be fully known, fully loved, and be free in Christ. Christ came to die so that he will set us free from these kinds of traps. Common boundary problems. So a lot of people, as I said, are unable to deal with boundaries. They are unable to set boundaries because they cannot say no. Okay, so they say yes, but deep down they mean no. And this is lack of clear communication. It can be confusing. So if you are a young woman and you are dating a young man, you go and visit him, he is touching you in places you don't want. And instead of saying clear, no, I do not want, you say, oh, just stop. This is not good. Just stop. It can be misunderstood. So say no when you mean to say no. Some people feel guilty for asserting their needs. So if they say, I don't like what you have done, and you feel bad, they feel bad that they are making you feel bad because they have said or they've told you off. And this kind of behavior enables others to be irresponsible. So if somebody likes to violate your boundaries, whether it is physical space or emotional space, and you are unable to speak clearly about it, they will continue to do it. And then it becomes a ritual. Some people allow boundaries to be broken because they fear rejection or they fear conflict. And so in the Christian space, these things occur. A lot of us also have problems or issues with boundaries, setting the right boundaries because of childhood experiences. Maybe we had over-controlling parents, or we had neglectful parents, and we were not properly trained to set boundaries. So we have not developed this critical skill of setting boundaries. And so even when we don't like something, we are too timid to say we don't like it. And then, as we said, some people will use religion to violate other people's boundaries. If you did not know, if you forget anything at all, so far what we have said, we can summarize them. If you are spending too much time or too little time than is expected, you may be violating somebody's temporal space or boundary. If you are too close physically or too distant to somebody or some people than is expected, you may be violating boundaries. If you spend more time or less time with people than is expected, you may be violating boundaries. If you over-depend on other people for emotional satisfaction, or if you provide space for someone to overly depend on you for emotional satisfaction, you may be violating boundaries. Now, such practices can create room for more boundary violations. For example, if you create more time, more space, more room for somebody to be overly dependent, it's like giving them cocaine. They become addicted to depending on you, and they cannot become autonomous. So this is very true for many of us who are parents and even spouses. We need to be sure that we are creating a healthy boundary for the people who are around us to grow, to thrive, not set them up to be overly dependent on you, and not set them up to starve from emotional issues and so on and so forth. So this is very important. Now, if a spouse or a child is emotionally starved, for example, they can easily go out. A lot of children who become truants, a lot of children who fall into bad company, usually tend to be children who have very little attention, very little emotional support, and they are looking for these things. So it is important as families in the church to pay attention to these things. Now, building healthy relationships, how do we do it? Are we going to create walls around us so that nobody can penetrate? No. What we need to do, Christ was our example. Christ withdrew to pray. Christ said no when he had to say no. So in John 2:4, when they wanted him to perform at the feast, he said, "My time is not yet come." So learn to say no. In Matthew 5:37, Christ says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." And in Revelation 3:16, he says, because you are neither cold nor hot, I will spit you out of my mouth. We cannot afford to be hypocrites. Christ hates hypocrisy. So set the boundaries, healthy boundaries, things that need to be done must be done. So Christ was not a hermit. He set boundaries, but he wasn't a hermit. He did not build a cage. He sets the boundaries. This cannot be done. You can't do this in my Father's house. And yet he was a people's person. So don't build walls that make you inaccessible. That is not setting boundaries. Inaccessible for friendship or marriage and so on and so forth. Instead, we will say set healthy boundaries, know the will of God, be true to yourself, know your values and respect them. If you don't know your values and respect them, nobody will know them and nobody will respect them. Like Joseph, like the 3 Hebrew boys, know what you want according to the will of God and live by these. Communicate them very clearly and people will take you seriously. So respect physical boundaries, observe purity, and I provide some Bible texts to support these emotional boundaries, the pace of intimacy. It's very important, especially among young people who are dating or courting. And then also we must respect spiritual boundaries. We should not idolize our relationships. It is important. We should learn to handle toxic dynamics in existing relationships. We should learn to say no with grace. We should allow for independence, not overdependence. We should navigate cultural expectations. I always say, if you are a Christian, your culture is Christ's culture. If any man or woman be in Christ, he's a new creature. So your culture is Christian culture. So what would God want you to do? What would Christ have you do? That's very important. Now, the very last thing I want to, because of time, talk about before we go. Now, I want to spend about 2 minutes to talk about boundaries in ministry and church life. Now, very often when we are religious, we are actively involved in the business of God. We can violate boundaries, even in our ministries. We can be so busy that we will lose intimacy with God. Constant busyness can drain our spiritual vitality so that our ministry becomes more like a routine. There is no substance. So we must try to avoid burnout, even in our ministry and mentorship. We must respect roles and responsibilities. We cannot do it all. We must learn to delegate. And when we delegate, we must trust people, give them the chance to thrive. We must assume responsibility for maintaining boundaries as church leaders, as people in ministry. So in this instance, consent is meaningless. If you are a church elder, you are a youth leader, pathfinder leader, you cannot talk about consent if you break sexual boundaries with church members. So assume responsibility. And the last point is balance service with self-care. And here I want to invite all people who are involved in church ministry to read chapter 38 of Ellen White's book, The Desire of Ages. The title is Come Rest a While. Now, if you do not balance service with self-care, it can actually jeopardize the ministry you are into. It can jeopardize your health. It can jeopardize your home. So balance is the key. Okay, we have just about 5 minutes to end. So to end the whole thing, since I am talking about time myself, I don't want to breach that. So I'll go straight to why boundaries matter. Boundaries matter because they honor God. When we set boundaries, we honor God, give to God what is God's. They protect us and they protect our relationships when we set boundaries. We must go back to be able to go forward. Many of us are carrying emotional baggage and all kinds of things from our past. Christ invites us to come to him, to invite him into our history for transformation to happen so that we can easily move forward. Now, remember that boundaries are like property lines. They define where you end and where someone else's begin. So we can talk more about these things on the Sabbath. We have just about 5 minutes, so I'll leave the rest of the presentation and invite comments and questions if there are any. Thank you. Hello?
Hi.
Okay. So please, you can take over and see if there are questions or comments before we go. Okay, I see Emmanuel Adom's hand.
Yes, Prof. Thank you very much for the good presentation. It's quite insightful and well educating. That's well done. I only hope that most of the youth are online. Maybe Sabbath too, they could also learn. My question is, if someone says boundaries are not too necessary, if you are in love or if you love, once you love, you can share. And so you may not need too strict boundaries. What is your comment?
You still need boundaries because even in love, you are an independent, autonomous person. You cannot love if you are not, you can't fully love if you are not independent and autonomous because love is a choice. So if you have no autonomy to choose to love, then there's no love. So even in love, in marriage relationship, in romantic relationship, yes, you are an autonomous person, individual. You are accountable to God. Christ died for you. And so your individuality should be maintained. So there are lines. I don't know if it helps.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
I just want to add that to this question, you cannot really, be like everybody, and everybody cannot be like you. Everybody is unique in a certain way. So even if you are in love, you need to study the person very well and adjust. Try as much as possible to adjust and watch the boundaries that have been listed today. It'll give you a better relationship than when you don't care about any boundaries because you are in love. It's like people encapsulating the whole Bible to say that when you are in love, if you have love, everything is in there. No need to keep any law. If you love, you will do what will please your partner. So study your partner. By all means, love is not the end of everything. Love is an action word. It's expressed in what you do more than what you say. So learn each other and adjust. There certainly will be boundaries. There is no relationship without boundaries, unless the persons have decided that they will live their own type of life. But in this life, there are boundaries. Study each other and adjust. The adjustment is very important so that there will be harmony. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pastor. I see the Jampo's hand raised.
Question is, how do you strike a balance between not keeping too much? Is there something like keeping too much boundary and the other side? So how do you strike a balance between the two?
Okay, so I said at some point that you, when you build a boundary, you are not in a cage. You are not building a cage and putting yourself in where no one can reach you or you cannot reach anyone. So when you build your own house, so the pictures I showed, and there is a wall around the house, the fence. The fence is not meant to restrict you, to prevent you from going out and coming in. It is to protect you. It is to prevent people from invading, outsiders from invading. So when you build healthy boundaries, you are metaphorically saying what I can take. Well, personally, you are saying this is what I can take and this is what I cannot take. This is my breaking point, and this is how far I can go, and this is a no-go area for me, for example. So it is not making yourself a cage and locking yourself up so nobody can reach you. No. It is helping other people relate to you in such a way that the relationship will be smooth and the relationship will be a blessing to both of you. Are we okay?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
Okay. Roland?
Thank you very much, Prof. Please, I want you to reflect and reconcile one thing for me. So there is the item of boundaries. Clearly, you have explained. And there's also the item of compromise. So when people come together, they become one in marriage, for instance, it is expected that they will be able to have some lower tolerance so they can compromise and be serving each other well. How do we reconcile these two ideologies in that the boundary is kind of expressing how much I can take or I can give, and now I have to compromise? So you hear people say, this is how I am, and now we are saying we have to also keep boundaries, we have to compromise. So how do you reconcile the two so that it will be balanced in a way that will make relationships gel well? I don't know if my question is clear.
It is clear. So let's say I like my tea hot and my husband likes his tea cold. If we have opportunity to drink our teas separately, this shouldn't be a problem. He should not force me to drink cold tea, and I should not force him to drink hot tea. Boundaries. But if we have to drink, there's only one glass of water that we have to use to make the tea. I like hot, he likes cold. The compromise will be to make it warm so that it is neither cold nor hot. He can tolerate a bit of heat and I can tolerate a bit of cold. I don't know if the analogy makes sense. So we are not saying that because you want to adjust, you are married, you lose yourself. You don't. But you are mindful because you don't want to lose yourself. You are mindful that the other person also does not lose themselves. It's more like what we would call diversity. Okay, when you go to the forest, it's not only one kind of tree or plant that makes the forest. Some are tall, some are short, some are very green, others are all kinds of colors, but they blend very well and they give a very nice picture. So it is knowing what the boundaries are for your spouse, and your spouse or your friend also knowing what the boundaries are for you. If you are to make a compromise, you have to understand what the boundaries are so that you know that even if you have to compromise, you are not overly stepping on you are not going too far from what makes them comfortable. Let me put it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for your wonderful presentation. God bless you. Thank you all for joining this evening program. Our closing hymn will be taken from hymn 350 by our brother Solomon. And also the closing hymn prayer to be done by him. Okay. That's okay.
Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Before our Father's throne, we pour our ardent prayers, our fears, our hopes, our aims are one, our comforts and our cares. We share each other's woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other's flows the sympathizing tear. When we asunder part, it gives us inward pain, but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. Amen. Father in heaven, as we close tonight, we are grateful for everything for us. We leave ourselves in your hands. Father, help us to be able to set our boundaries adequately, correctly. Help us to know where we want to start, when we want to stop, when to say no, and when to say yes. Father, be our guide. Be with us. Let us be transparent enough. Let us love and love unconditionally. But let us be smart about the choices we also make. We thank you so much for what Prof has taken us through today. Help us that these words will guide us in everything we do, in our aspects of everything in our lives, so that, Father, in every step we take, in every move we make, Father, we know that we have a boundary that we can rely on. We are grateful that, Father, you're going to be with us throughout tonight as we wait for tomorrow for another inspiring topic. We leave ourselves in your hands. Protect us, guide us, keep us together. We love you. Thank you for everything you have done in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We shall meet here, same time, God willing, tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thank you all for joining.
Bye.
Hello, a quick announcement. Tomorrow we'll meet at church. Tomorrow's program will be an in-person one. So we'll all meet at church. We'll have Elder Godolansa taking us through. So tomorrow's program will be at church. It's an in-person program. Then we are also encouraged to register for our December program. From 4th to 7th December, our road leads to Volta residences. So we are all reminded that we are encouraged to register. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's all try to be there tomorrow in person to help all of us. We are learning new things that are very pertinent and will see us through our marriages and our relationships. So please try and come tomorrow. If you have not been at prayer meetings time, Wednesdays for some time, please, tomorrow let it be the beginning. And if you are broken off for some time, let it be a continuation tomorrow to return back to the midweek time with God and time with ourselves. God bless you all.
Yes, sir.